So in this mini lecture, and I hope it's going to be a mini lecture, what I want to do is I don't want to discuss the differences in creative writing between showing and telling. So what in any creative writing class, you're normally going to be encouraged to show and not tell. The objectives are a discussion on the differences between telling, which are making statements of abstractions, and showing, creating concrete and/or sensory descriptions and images within your creative writing. So when I'm talking about telling statements, I don't mean like a really concrete telling statement such as go sit in the chair. In creative writing, when we're referring to telling, we are saying that as opposed to showing an abstract concept, an abstract idea, or an abstract emotion, the writer has relied upon merely stating it. And you'll see that shortly. And I also want to go over your informal assignment number 1. And it's all based around showing and telling. So telling is abstract, showing is concrete. An abstraction is an idea. For example, sadness is an abstract concept. We can't touch it, we can't taste it, we can't hear it. It is unique to every person. However, there are embodied physical manifestations of sadness, such as we can hear crying, we can touch and taste tears. Crying doesn't necessarily mean sadness. So that's another thing to be aware of. You can have a character cry and it can be out of anger and frustration as opposed to sadness. So again, embodying physical manifestations is complex. So by showing your readers physical manifestations that can evoke a response is creating conditions of an experience. And these conditions of experiences are meant to work within the reader in evoking responses, whether they're emotional, physical, or mental. Telling merely states abstractions. So for example, these are telling examples. She is generous, she is a jerk, I love him. Those don't do anything. I haven't proven anything. I've just told you she is generous. You don't know if that's true. You're not even really allowed to necessarily think about it. I'm just telling you something. Showing should use a detail that illustrates an abstract concept. So she is generous can become, she pays for my latte when she knows I'm short on money. She's a jerk should become an example of that. She tells everyone I failed my driver's exam. I love him, that's an empty phrase. Whereas I make him a cup of tea and kiss him um, evokes images of caring and affection. I am in pain is an abstraction. I am in pain doesn't necessarily evoke a direct response, whereas I have a paper cut evokes a response. It evokes knowledge. It may remind the reader of their own paper cuts, their own pain. So, and then I've just given you like 3 examples of how to elicit concepts of pain. So here's an example. He wasn't sure why he was shouting and couldn't remember how it had begun, but he was shouting terrible things as if he'd never loved her, as if he didn't love her, as if he wouldn't ever love her again. Her eyes welled up like 2 orbs of clear blue. Really not much is happening here other than someone's shouting. And apparently they feel, I guess, bad about it. The idea that she's hurt, all we have is her eyes welled up like 2 orbs of clear blue. This is not good writing. There's a lot of telling, there's a lot of cliche. Um, it's very flat. Example two, she cowered when he shouted, which she was sure made him shout more. She wasn't sure though. She tried to not cry. She tried to not play what he would think of as her victim card. She stood up taller, feeling tears welling up the whole time. Again, this is a little better, but not much. We're still being told a lot of things as opposed to being shown anything. Example three, someone is speaking. I don't know why you think I should do everything. I should pay the bills. I should clean the yard. I should climb the ladder and clean the gutters. I should then clean the house and do the laundry. He sighed and sat heavily on the Chesterfield. She reached down for the book that she'd been reading. She dropped it, staring at her index finger and the lean line of blood. So now we have things that are actually happening, and we have ways of getting a reader to respond. We're not really telling anything, we're actually just showing. There's a man who is saying things to what we imagine is probably his lover. And we're seeing what he does. He sighed and sat heavily on the Chesterfield. A Chesterfield, for those of you who are not born in Canada, is a couch or a sofa. I like making sure that Canadian words don't die out, so I like to use them as much as possible. And then we're seeing she reached down for the book that she'd been reading. She dropped it, staring at her index finger and the lean line of blood. So we're actually seeing her emotional pain being illustrated through this paper cut. So there's actually quite a bit of work going on in example three. I hope this is helpful, by the way. So you can show through obviously specific and concrete nouns. For example, a paper cut. You can also show through sensory nouns that, and a sensory noun refers to nouns that are involving the senses, like our taste buds, our hearing, touching, seeing, smelling. So I'm going to shift over a little bit into informal assignment number one. So in informal assignment number one, what I'm asking you to do is write a poem. And these are the things, the rules I want you to follow when you embark upon writing this poem. So I want you to choose a person that you have strong feelings about. Rely upon telling statements. And there are a series of telling statements and a document on Moodle. For this assignment, I chose my mother. I chose 5 statements from the document that most describe my mother. So the statements I chose were: she is often lonely, she is generous, she enjoys conforming to rules, she often feels anxious and apprehensive, she tends to be overprotective. Now, people are, by their very nature, very complex and will usually contradict themselves. So I want you to then choose 3 contradictory statements for the same person. So I chose: she is courageous, she is optimistic, and she is fun-loving. So now I have 8 telling statements that I need to take and adjust into showing statements. So I took she is lonely, and I was thinking, okay, like how can I create like a real concrete showing description that will evoke responses. So I considered something like: she puts the kettle on and stares out the kitchen window towards the pasture with the fence leaning close to the ground, nearly parallel one to the other. She places the tea bag into the cup, waiting for the steam to wind its way from the kettle into the morning air. So that's what I did. And remember, please be gentle with yourself when you're writing. These are all my first drafts. I haven't tried to rewrite anything. I tried to do it the way I imagined you would be doing it. My second telling is she is generous. My showing is she scoops her rice onto my brother's plate. She enjoys conforming to rules. Every day at noon, she eats lunch. She often feels anxious and apprehensive. If I don't answer her call, she believes I'm dead. She sees me in ditches covered in debris like my cousin found outside of Prince Rupert. She tends to be overprotective. As we walk alongside her property line, she places, sometimes pushes her body between mine and the road. She's courageous. She packs us up and heads into new towns, provinces, and countries, telling me we're on a new adventure. She is optimistic. Even as the van sits broke down on the side of the road, she says to me, a new adventure. She's fun loving. When I'm 12, she wakes me in the middle of the night singing Linda Ronstadt's Poor, Poor, Pitiful Me. So we can also take telling statements and replace these with sensory noun descriptions. So this is now I really want to rely on senses. So for she is often lonely, I thought of like what images or what evokes loneliness in me. And I came up with twilight in the back alley of a European city, laundry hanging on a clothesline in the rain, smell of poplar leaves. She's generous, homemade bread. She enjoys conforming to rules, a house that smells of bleach, hands that smell of sanitizer, the queue outside of a store. She often feels anxious and apprehensive, bottle of pills, bitten nails, chapped lips. She tends to be overprotective, sound of a whistle, glare of a flashlight, horn honking, and so on. So obviously these are going to be very different for everyone. So showing and not telling is a fundamental, I just can't enunciate that enough, a fundamental task of all creative writers. So remember that telling is prescriptive. It tells you what to think. It closes any other considerations. It leaves nothing for your reader to discover, for them to experience. It leaves no room for them to make up their own mind. So showing is generative, it is nuanced, it creates avenues for your readers to read into, to create something for themselves. So write your own poem based upon the images, words, phrases, and so on that you've created in these exercises for your informal assignment number 1. I do hope that you enjoy your informal assignments. I hope that they generate a lot of wonderful writing. So thank you, and have a wonderful week or weekend or evening or afternoon or whatever it is whenever you're watching this. And yeah, I hope you're well. Okay, bye.